Oh, and they're attendees. Okay.
Morning, everyone. Let's see. Okay, everyone can see my screen. So welcome to the Multimedia Creative Services request for qualification. Please note that this webinar will be recorded. And just as a FYI, there is a few second delay on my PowerPoint presentation. So if you see me stalling, it's because of that. I do want to go through a few house rules and reminders. Like I said, this webinar is being recorded. Please mute your phone or computer microphone to ensure that we do not have any audio difficulties. As far as questions, please submit them. So there's the mute button. And then please submit your questions via the questions panel. You can submit your questions throughout the presentation. Do not push the little hand raise button for questions. Just submit the questions in the question box. The recording of this info session will be posted on our Funding Center website, as well as the presentation deck. So you'll have access to both of these sets of information after today's phone call. But before we begin, I want to do a audio check, and if you could please raise your hands to see if you can hear me clearly. Okay, I see a few hands, so I'm assuming we're all good. So I'm going to put everyone's hands down, and we're going to begin. So hello and welcome. My name is Daisy Ortiz. I'm the Contract Compliance Officer for this project. I have the Communications Department Director, Gabriel Sanchez. So we will be doing the presentation together. And then today's agenda, I'm going to, on the screen, you see an overview of today's presentation. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we will address your questions. But like I said, you can submit your questions at any moment in the presentation. We just won't answer them until the end of the presentation. And if there's a question we may not necessarily know the answer to, we will not be answering it during today's Q&A, but we will be providing a response to you in written form, and we will post it on our funding site website so that everyone has access to the answer. So to begin, about First 5 LA. For those that are not familiar with us as an organization, First 5 LA is a public agency established in 1998 following the passage of Proposition 10 by California voters, which is a state tax on cigarettes. We are a funder, collaborator, and advocate focused on supporting children prenatal through the ages of 5. We prioritize this age as it is a critical window of time, given that 90% of a child's brain is developed by the age of 5. So First 5 LA's 2020-2028 strategic plan articulates that we have an organizational North Star. And that North Star is that by 2028, all children in Los Angeles County will enter kindergarten ready to succeed in school and life. Our new strategic plan, or refined, will help guide and accelerate all that First 5 LA does to make a tangible difference in the lives of children of today and tomorrow. To reach our North Star, First 5 LA wants systems to work better for all families focused in LA County by making them more family-centered and child-focused, with a focus on 4 results that include families have the resources, opportunities, relationships, and environments to optimize their child's development. Children enter kindergarten without any previously unidentified developmental delays and connect them to developmentally appropriate services and supports. Children are safe from abuse, neglect, and other trauma. And the fourth one is children have high quality early care and education, or ECE, experiences prior to entering kindergarten. A little bit more about us. First Five LA grounds its work in its values that act as guiding principles for how it does its work, the culture it aims to promote, and as a benchmark to measure those behaviors and performances. Our values are rooted in collaboration, integrity, learning, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. More specifically, we have investment guidelines, which serve as criteria for decision-making for all major components of the strategic planning process, and our ongoing policy guidance for board. So we have a board of commissioners and our staff during that implementation. Together, the investment guidelines represent a 6-part identity statement for First Five LA that explicitly prioritize adopting an equity lens through our work and addressing the critical challenges of declining First Five LA revenue. So our 6-part identity statements includes equity, sustainability, partnership, prevention, systems change, evidence, and innovation. For more information on First Five LA strategic plan, please consult Appendix A of this solicitation, which is our strategic plan. So you have access to it. Now that I've completed an overview of First Five LA, my colleague Gabriel will provide us with background on some of our efforts and the use of communications as a key strategy to achieve our outcomes.
Thank you very much, Daisy, and good morning, everyone. I'm very glad you're able to join us today. I want to talk a bit about how First Five LA uses communications. Specifically, we're seeking to use communications and marketing strategies to help educate and raise awareness of the importance of early childhood development. And the reason why we want to do this is we want to drive the change of norms, attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs so young children are prioritized in policy and budget decisions. And we look at communications as a vehicle to help create lasting, equitable changes to policies, programs, and systems of care, such as early education and healthcare, so that they work better to address the needs of children and their families. Next slide, please. So we also are using communications to contribute to the advancement of our 2020-2028 strategic plan. And we have some specific goals here, specifically to build our brand as an advocate, or continue to build our brand as an advocate, as a partner, a funder, a convener. And when we say convener, we mean bringing diverse groups together, whether they're leaders of different hospital systems, community groups, and what have you, as well as being an expert source to decision makers and to the public and the media. We also want to use communications to engage, educate, and influence decision makers, including but not limited to state policymakers, such as the state assembly, state senate, the governor, other constitutional officers, local elected officials, city councilmen, mayors, other officials at the administration level, county agencies, community leaders, business leaders, and leaders at higher education institutions. One of our other goals also is to elevate awareness of the importance of early childhood development. We also want to create urgency to address these issues and to improve conditions that impact young children and their families, as well as we want to drive support for internal communications to help advance our agency goals. Next slide, please. Oh, it's project overview. Okay, so let's see. So I want to provide, the next slide too, please, pardon me. Next, we want to give a project overview for this RFQ. So we are seeking one qualified agency to provide a full range of multimedia creative services, and that includes, but not limited to, graphic design for print, for digital, for social media and presentations, for photography, photo cataloging and photo organization, videography, that includes film editing, audio production and post-production, and related services. The goal is to complement existing integrated communication campaigns and initiatives and develop new campaigns and initiatives that inform, educate, and encourage target audiences to take action and influence changes in behaviors and beliefs. And projects that will be related to early childhood development issues, specifically, just to define what we mean by early childhood development, are early childhood education, or ECE, that's a term that's commonly used, issues, healthcare systems, particularly how these systems affect young children, family supports, meaning other services available for families with young children, along with current events that affect young children, such as, but not limited to, public health, prenatal care, nutrition, wellness, physical activity, child development, parent resiliency, family strengthening, and by that we mean protective factors, which there is a lot of information you can find about that, but essentially it's helping parents understand things about childhood development, about other factors that influence their development, how to be, in some cases, learn more about parenting and knowing that parenting is a journey, as well as general parenting advice. Next slide, please. I know we mentioned audience, and I wanted to be clear on the audiences we're looking to communicate with, and that includes policy and decision makers, as defined previously as different lawmakers, elected officials, as well as the heads of agencies and departments, such as the Department of Public Health, Department of Social Services, parents and parents and caregivers, meaning those also involved in the giving of care to young children, the general public, and I'll add another part to this too, is in this case, adults without children, members of the community, and other partners. And by that we mean other partner organizations that we might work with, such as the California Endowment, the California Community Foundation, Para los Niños, other grantees, and that's what we mean by partners. And our existing social media and digital channels are, of course, our website at firstfla.org. We also have a parenting website separately with a separate architecture at firstfla.org/parenting. That's designed primarily to be a mobile-first experience for parents, as well as we have our Twitter account at first5la. I'll also add we have a presence on Facebook and Instagram that's also at first5la, but that's geared primarily towards parents. Next slide, please. So our goal with these projects is to design insightful multimedia campaigns that inform, educate, and encourage target audiences, as I mentioned earlier, to take action by becoming champions for young children and their families, and to help change behaviors, beliefs, and norms. I think next slide is scope of work, which we can go to slide 19, thank you. The scope of work, as mentioned in pages 6 and 7 of the RFQ, which you can find a more detailed description of the scope of work. But broadly, the scope of work is intended to advance the understanding of early childhood development, to build and sustain public will to support necessary changes to systems to make them work better for children and their families, and to influence changes in norms, attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs to prioritize young children, consistent with our 2020-2028 strategic plan and our mission, our vision, and our values, which I'll also point to, which are some of the appendices as well, if you're looking for that information. Next, oh, Daisy's already advancing right on. Thank you. So the projects that will be included under this RFQ will include, but not limited to, because as you know, things change, other things might happen, but this is more broadly, we look at core projects that include graphic design and development for print and digital, and that includes email like newsletters, such as like we use MailChimp, so MailChimp templates, for example, or other bulk emailers having kind of an HTML style email, websites, meaning some of the web design, not necessarily web development, meaning more graphics for the front end, not the developmental end. I want to be clear about that. Social media content such as animated GIFs and motion graphics, as well as out-of-home advertising. And by that, we mean billboards, kiosks, bus shelters, or even exhibits at events, even though right now we are not doing events because of the pandemic. But in the future, that will be something that we will be looking at, along with slide presentations like the one you see here, or presentations that our staff may make to our board, or that some of our leadership might be making to other partners and external stakeholder groups to either encourage participation or inform them about issues. For videography, we mean that to mean direction, script and storyboard development, production and post-production, meaning everything it needs to take to produce it, whether it's location scouting, hiring talent if need be, getting other people there, volunteers or what have you, arranging all that, everything that goes into production. Post-production, editing and other related services, and I mentioned here already location scouting and casting for short and long form videos for delivery on social and digital media platforms. And to be clear, when we say short form, we're looking at primarily maybe 30 seconds, give or take, particularly for social media, either Twitter or Facebook. And for longer form, we might mean, in some cases, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. We have not done any longer form videos where it's something like 10 or 15 minutes, but that could be a potential project. For photography, again, it's photo direction, production, photo cataloging and organization. We want to be able to find these photos, and related services for print and digital applications. We also mean audio production and post-production. That includes sound design, effects, sound editing, audio mixing for digital audio, for podcasts, and say public service announcements, which might be like a 30 or 60-second ad for either radio or for TV broadcast. Next slide, please. So additional services for the scope of work. Oh, I'll wait for the slide to advance. Perfect. Additional services would include supporting development of social media content, including but not limited to animated GIFs and motion graphics, as mentioned earlier. Exhibit and event materials, meaning we might want some design for either like a booth experience, maybe a backdrop or what have you, those type of things you would want to put into an event, or something that's more experiential. Marketing collateral design and development, meaning one-pagers, brochures, mailers, other types of booklets that we might use as a leave behind or other projects like that, as well as email marketing design and related services. Again, as I mentioned, doing things for HTML templates for a MailChimp or even for Outlook possibly, and the like. So the objective, timeline, and deliverable for each project will vary in frequency and length. In addition, the selected contractor must adhere to our style guidelines, which also are one of the appendices, which should be applied to all work products requested in the scope of work. And one other point I wanted to make, that creating collateral and video for First 5LA requires that you be familiar with the goals of our department, as discussed under Section 2 background of the RFQ, and to develop an understanding of our 2020-2028 strategic plan. As part of the onboarding strategy for the awarded contractor, that First 5LA will meet with the selected contractor and share the goals of this department and information on our goals, which is critical in creating multimedia content. Next, I will pass it to Daisy to discuss terms of this project.
Terms of the project. The terms of the project are on pages 8 and 9 of the RFP. The project term is 4 years and 8 months. The total project amount is not to exceed $325,000 per year. We will have an initial 8-month agreement for the amount and not to exceed $225,000. We anticipate starting this agreement on November 1st, 2020. This project will include a task order contract, which means that First 5LA will issue task orders as needed for each project with a specified scope, schedule, and budget. Please note that the task order may be a fixed price or a time and material hourly rate, which is at the sole discretion of First 5LA, and obviously depending on what the task order is. First 5 LA does reserve the right to negotiate hourly rates. The number of hours per assignment shall be negotiated before any work commences, and invoices will be paid based on the negotiated payment structure and included in each task order. First 5 LA reserves the right to use the contractor based on the need, objective, timeline, and capacity for assignment, which will vary in frequency and length. As far as desired eligibility or eligibility requirements and desired qualifications, we're going to start with the eligibility requirements. My slide is super slow. Let's try again. Okay, we'll give it a second, but the desired or eligibility requirements are on page 7 of the RFQ. Starting with the eligibility, I just wanted to ask if, okay, there you go. Now it's showing. So with the eligibility requirements, the applicants must meet the following requirements presented on your screen. Before you, in the online application, proposers will be asked these questions, these 3. Please note that these requirements will be reviewed during level 1 review, and proposers that do not meet these requirements will not advance to the next level of review, which is the review of proposals. And we will discuss the levels of review shortly in the presentation, but I did want to discuss before I get to that. So when you're filling out the online application, you will be asked a yes or no question. Do you meet the minimum of 5 years of operation as a legal entity? If it's a yes, you will, if all of these are yeses, you will continue on to fill out the rest of the application. If there are no's or various degrees of yes and no's, you will not be able to. The application will not let you. So there's that first step. And then when the application gets to the first level of review, we verify the yeses again. So that's kind of what I meant. Gabriel will now discuss the desired qualifications and experience. So let me click on this slide.
Thank you, Daisy. Should run that page. So the following qualifications are desired. We're looking for Los Angeles County competencies, a knowledge of LA County's cultural, social, and political landscape. Particularly, we're looking for experience working with culturally, ethnically, linguistically, and socio-economically diverse groups in LA County. For technical experience, we're looking for experience in producing a wide variety of multimedia content under aggressive timelines. We're also looking for experience in interpreting and translating complex topics, such as a state budget proposal, policy briefs, research findings, and other types of reports into easy to understand print, digital, and video content to appeal to targeted audiences. And particularly this is important because we want to be able, you've all seen thick reports, but sometimes there needs to be a headline or graphic that highlights things, that makes it plain. And that's what we're looking for, that technical experience to help us do, to find a highlight within a report or other type of policy brief and bring it to life in terms of graphic or infographic that makes it impactful and understandable for a broader audience. And for content experience, we're looking for familiarity with early childhood development issues. Again, specifically, early childhood education, healthcare systems that affect young children, family supports for families with young children, and again, current events that affect young children, such as, but not limited to, prenatal care, nutrition, wellness, physical activity, child development, parent resiliency, family strengthening, and general parenting advice. And then also you should refer to page 8 of the RFQ for additional details. And next, I'll turn it back over to Daisy.
So right now we're going to go through the required documents and the selection process. The required documents are on pages 10 through 12 of the RFQ, and the selection process on pages 9 to 10. So first up is the required documents. Applicants must submit all required documents through our online application process, which we'll discuss in like one slide. But we have also provided you with Appendix C, which is an application checklist to ensure that you've provided us with a complete application. Omission of any document or form may constitute an incomplete proposal and may be grounds for disqualification. So this is the list. I'm actually going to go through each one shortly. So first up on the list is the online application. In order to respond to this RFQ, proposers must complete an online application form and submit all required documents specified below through this online application system. Proposers must set up an online account in order to access the application form. Instructions on how to set up this account and access I linked it in this PowerPoint presentation so that you can click on it, but it's also on our funding site. And this link is the link to the actual application for this solicitation. The second required document is a creative writing brief. Yes, so there is a 4-page limit, and these are kind of the instruction. This first paragraph are the instructions, and then the second paragraph is the intent for this exercise. For the narrative, there's actually 2 parts. So you are supposed to provide a narrative that addresses the following 2 criteria, which is an A and a B. A has sub points, but there is a 9-page limit. Please make sure that you tag what section you're addressing. For example, 3A1, 3A2, and then 3B. So this is part B, and it's part of the narrative of qualifications and experience. So for required document number 4, those are the samples, and we are including an appendix E. This one I am going to read because it's kind of a lot of information, but proposers must submit 3 relevant pieces of content samples of similar or comparable content in each of the categories below. So in total, we're looking for 12 samples, which demonstrate your skills at creating multimedia content and relevant experience and expertise, and highlights the desired qualifications listed in section 6 of the summary of desired qualifications. These samples can relate to early childhood developmental issues as outlined in the section 4 scope of work, but are not required. Please, I'm gonna show you the appendices, but review the appendix for further instructions on format and manner of submission of the samples. We are also asking you to identify the team members described in the narrative of qualifications and relevant experience, if there are any, that were involved in the creation of this work sample by name and their role in the creation of the work sample. So these are the 4 categories that you are required to submit samples. And this is what Appendix E looks like. So the first page, the bigger page, is this is the cover page, which explains the different format of submission. So if you are submitting a non-video file, we have instructions for that. And then if you have a video file, we also have instructions on how to do that. And then each of these cover pages correspond to the category that we're seeking to find. Please, so this file is a Word document. That way you can easily type the information, but we basically ask you like a description, what it is, and the roles. Oh, these are more, I made them bigger so you can see it. And then for the online application, so this is what you're gonna see in attachments. When you're submitting your attachments, the reason why you're not seeing a number 1 is because number 1 is the online application, which you are in. So we start with number 2, since you will be submitting a creative writing brief exercise, your narrative, and then each of the work samples have its own tab. So 4A is the graphic design, direction, and production experience work sample. 4B is the video direction and production experience sample. C and D, like I said, each one has its own sample. 5 is the proposed rates, which I'm going to talk about shortly, but what I do want to highlight is the maximum size for the maximum size for all attachment combined is 1,000 megabytes. So look at Appendix E to see how you can submit your documents, because if it is a non-video file and it pushes you kind of over this amount, you can follow the directions and submit through, we're asking you to submit some files through like a Dropbox or Box feature. So if it's too big, or it could compromise like the quality of your file, just follow the instructions on the data, or not the data sharing, but the document sharing section. I hope that made sense. And then number 5 is the proposed rates, which is Appendix F. This is the document that you're looking at for Appendix F. And then number 6 is the litigation and contract compliance form. Please read the information on this required form thoroughly and include a signed copy by the proposal date. Do not forget this form. Omission of this form will constitute an incomplete proposal and may be grounds for disqualification. That applies to all of the documents, but it especially applies to this one. If you click yes to any of the questions on this form, please explain the circumstances for the response and explain whether this will have an impact on the project on the solicitation. I am highlighting this because people forget to do this. It's actually in this first box, but please don't forget, it's very important. And we need that information. So that's why I'm calling it out here again. So for the selection criteria, for selection process and review criteria, like I said, those are on pages 9 and 10 of the RFQ. This solicitation will have 3 levels of review. The first one is the internal or administrative review, where I will look at many factors, including the proposals for completeness and minimum requirements, which include timely receipt of the proposal, submission of all required attachments, and adherence to the eligibility requirements. Proposals with omissions of any required documents are subject to disqualification. We also conduct a due diligence review that includes a review of the litigation and contract compliance form, which is why I was asking you to complete if it's yes, complete that part too. And we review whether the proposers those who are current and former contractors, grantees, and vendors currently remain in non-compliant status by First 5 under any existing or past agreement with First 5 LA. We reserve the right to request additional information if needed to validate your eligibility and/or minimum requirements. We also conduct a conflict of interest review for the proposers, including any subcontractors there may be. For level 2, that is the proposal review, and proposals that pass level 1 review will then proceed to the second level. Prior to beginning their review, reviewers will be assessed for conflict of interest with the proposers, including subcontractors, and will sign a conflict of interest form to certify that there are no conflicts of interest issues. Proposal reviews will score proposers using the review tool listed as appendix. It's not A, I believe it's B now, which we will go shortly. The proposal review panel will be comprised of staff from First 5 LA, and they will participate in a calibration session prior to finalizing their scores. Proposers scoring highly in level 2 will then proceed to level 3, which is the interview. Interviews will be held virtually as an online meeting or via telephone. The interview panel will also be comprised of First 5 LA staff, which will then participate in a calibration session prior to finalizing their scores. Please note that we may ask for any written material before or after the interview, and First 5 reserves the right to schedule additional interviews or meetings should any questions arise. Reference checks will be completed after level 3, and proposers will then be asked to submit references after level 3 to provide references for similar work. Please note that for the level 3 interview, look at section 1, which is the timeline. We've already identified what dates we're looking at for interviews. Please save them. That's our intended dates. If anything changes, we will update accordingly, but that's where we're looking at for the interviews. The highest scoring proposal with a combined level of level 2 and level 3 in combination with information obtained through reference checks will be recommended for award of the contract to our Board of Commissioners. So Appendix B in the solicitation is the level 2 proposal review. Please review this because this is the document that the proposal reviewers will be looking at when they are reviewing your proposals. So it's this slide 42 and 43. So as far as application submission, please always reference the RFQ itself for details related to the solicitation. Failure to submit all required documents will constitute an incomplete proposal and may be grounds for disqualification. Proposals received after the deadline of August 6, 2020, 5 p.m. Will not be considered. Please don't wait to submit your documents through our online application minutes before closing time. First 5 LA will not be responsible for any delays the proposers may encounter with the online application system due to multiple proposers uploading the documents before closing time. First 5 LA shall not be liable for any costs incurred in connection with a proposer's preparation of the proposal in response to this RFQ. Any cover letters, resumes, CVs including attached materials submitted in response to this RFQ shall become First 5 LA's property and is subject to public disclosure. Also, please adhere to the page limitation requirements. any application that fails to adhere to it will be adjusted by having the removal of those pages from the application. So proposers will not get to see the extra pages. And yeah. As far as addenda, please check the Funding Center page regularly for updates and addenda. We have, First 5 LA has the right to amend the solicitation by written addendum. First 5 is only responsible for which it has expressly stated in the solicitation document and any authorized written addenda thereto. Such addenda shall be made available via the online Funding Center. You'll notice it because there's going to be a section that says updates, and we will identify what the update is and the section it's in. So it is the responsibility of the proposer to ensure that prior to submission, their application reflects the most recent information and RFQ requirements. As far as timeline, we are here at the info session. The final, as I said, I noticed that a few people have already submitted questions. That's excellent. Thank you. Keep them coming. But this is not your only opportunity to submit questions. We actually have, you can submit questions to me at any moment up until July 24th, 2020, close of business. We will be posting all responses, including the ones for today's session, on July 30th. The proposal is due August 6th, and interviews are scheduled to occur between August 24th through August 28th. My name is Daisy, as I said earlier. I am the person managing the solicitation, so any correspondence will come through me. I am the one who sends out the interview invitations, so if you expect correspondence from me. The contractor will be selected on September 1st, and we have to go to our Board of Commissioners for approval of this prospective contract on October 8th, which is why we're starting our contract on November 1st. Are subject to change at First 5 LA's sole discretion by, like I said, please save the dates for the interviews because it is our priority to make them happen during this frame. So we will now place you on a brief hold while we review your questions to see what we can address during our time today. Any questions that are not responded to today during our webinar will be responded to in written form and will also be posted on our funding site, which we just discussed. As detailed in the RFQ, all questions must be submitted to the email address on the screen before you. And all questions submitted via the question box in this webinar will be included in the posting of the questions as described in the timeline of the RFQ. So I'm putting you on a brief hold just to review the questions, but keep sending them if you have them. So the first question we received is, with one of your largest goals being around building brand, how do you see the creative brief writing exercise around child protection and prevention of abuse to be relevant to your bigger objectives? Gabriel?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if we're still in the chat. Pardon me.
No.
Are we? I want people to refer to the communication department goals of page 6 of the RFQ, as well as what's needed to make First 5 LA's North Star a reality in section 2, to provide the answers for that.
Okay. I think this is the second question, but with outputs focused on production elements, what focus do you put internally on brand and campaign strategy?
Yeah, that's a goofy question. Wait, we're only organizers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That one.
No, we're live.
Oh, well, hey, sorry. No, and that one I just want to refer them back to the department goals, because that's
Okay.
what it's if you look at it, it's literally number 1, build the agency's brand. So with some of these, I want to try to refer people as often as possible back to the RFQ.
Okay.
So I feel comfortable with that answer. It's just like look at our goals. Like, what focus do you put internally? Look at our goals. So.
So for question number 2, I think the question I just read, questioner, I'm going to just talk to you or message you offline to ask if there's further, what you're looking for further for the second question. Okay. As far as question number 3, actually, I think the first 3 questions are from the same person. So I think whoever asked these 3 questions, we're going to discuss with you offline just to see if, one, they sound related, but just to kind of get more information as to what is the intent of the question is. So I'm gonna put everyone on a brief hold to review the rest of these questions.
Okay.
So one of the questions we have here is, how much of this effort is being directed specifically at parents, families directly versus government officials, higher ed and professionals, etc.? This is the scope of this is more of a scope of work question, and this is something that will be discussed with the awarded contractor more specifically. Everyone sent a lot of questions, which is fantastic, but I'm placing everyone on a brief hold to review. We received a question about, we responded to the first RFQ for social media and digital marketing. Can we also compete for this one? The answer is yes, you can. One of the questions is, how do you want video, radio creative to be provided? If you look at Appendix E, we provided instructions for that. So for the most part, we will want you to, any any video file, whether it's, or let me clarify, any multimedia file that's not a PDF should be submitted using either a box or Dropbox link, mostly because our online application system only accepts PDFs. We don't want to accept PDF or our online application system only accepts files that are not multimedia. So that's why we're asking for that. That's why we're providing those instructions, because it literally cannot accept those not or video files. The other question is, can you share your scoring criteria? Yes, it is on, our scoring criteria are on slides 42 and 43 of this presentation, as well as Appendix B, which is the level 2 review tool. So those, like I said, the presentation will be posted after this meeting, but they will also, Appendix B is already online, so you can find that. Where will this video be available after the webinar? It will be in this solicitations funding site, which we will post after this meeting. If you found the link to sign up for this webinar, that's where it's going to be. Like literally the paragraph after. So one of the questions is, can we go into more detail in the creative writing brief exercise? Let me go back to it. So for the creative writing brief exercise, we are asking for we're asking applicants to write a creative writing brief no more than 4 pages in total on how to explain, elevate, and create urgency on child abuse prevention services for families with infants and preschool age children living in Los Angeles County. The link is the attachment to that report. The multimedia content should explain the issues, elevate awareness, create a sense of urgency, and engage audiences on how, in order to build public support on solutions outlined on pages 11 and through 14 on the plan. I'm going to take my best stab at it, but if Gabriel wants to jump in, he will do so. But the reason why so when you look at the totality of this solicitation and the required documents, we're asking a lot about what your qualifications are. Show us what you've done. The creative writing brief exercise is show us what you can do for us, in the sense that, as Gabriel mentioned, the world we're trying to occupy is, we live in 2 worlds. Like, we have to explain to our public, which includes government agencies, parents, and everyone in between, what are some of the issues that are addressing children, or that children ages 0 to 5 are facing. But with that, we're trying to find that voice that can be able to explain it. Now, we can learn a lot from all of your qualifications and the samples, but the writing brief exercise is your opportunity to show us, like, in our world, how would you do that? So that's kind of why that's why we're intending this exercise, so that you can show us your ability to digest complex information and craft clear and compelling and informative multimedia content and messaging for the general public, adults without children, that's consistent with First 5 LA's mission, vision, and values. So the brief, we're asking you to show us your approach to the concept development, pre-production, research, work plan phases, collaboration with other First 5 LA partners, providing integrated communications and marketing, social and digital media strategies and services, and communications with First 5 LA's in-house staff. So this is like a little glimpse of kind of the work that this department does. So that's why we're asking the creative writing brief, so that you can show us basically, like, this is what you can do with the world we live in. I'm not sure if Gabriel wants to add anything further, but
yeah, I will. Yeah, I just want thank you, Daisy. You explained it very well. And again, just to reiterate, this is an example of the type of work that we would ask the awarded contractee to do. And so we wanted to get a sense of how would you approach it beyond seeing the samples you might provide, but we wanted to get a real world example of how you might approach something like this. And again, digest some very complex information. As you'll see when you read the report, there's a lot in there. And that's just the nature of things, and the nature of the work that we do. There's a lot of complex reports. What can you create to demonstrate why this is important, and essentially, again, help change behaviors, patterns, and norms, and how to influence different audiences, including decision makers, parents, and caregivers, to elevate awareness and create urgency to help create solutions. That's what we're looking for, and that's why the writing sample is. That's the reason for the creative brief, and that's what we're looking for.
I think we're gonna have time for like one more question. One of the questions we got was, is the media budget separate from the contract award amount, and can you share the estimated media budget? So we have separate budgets for media placements, and that budget will be discussed with the awarded contractor. Actually, we may have time for one more.
Daisy, maybe I could take the one on the current in-house communications team.
Okay.
So the question is, what does the current in-house communications marketing team look like? Does First 5 LA have people in-house creating and distributing content? I'll say this briefly. We currently have a staff of 9 working in 3 different streams. One is internal communications. Another is marketing strategies, primarily to parents and caregivers. And then we have another work stream with primarily to decision makers and more public affairs. So we have 3 managers along with staff underneath, as well as myself, the director. And yes, we have a graphic designer in-house, only one, that handles a lot of some of our varying needs. And so we would look to the requested proposer, of course, to work with our in-house team, as well as I'm going to answer another question a little bit too, with other agency partners as well, for both creative direction, for strategy and placement, so that we're complementing all of our work. We want to be complementary to other elements of other work, meaning we don't want to think of, say, for example, a piece of multimedia content, say for a Facebook post, to not have other complementary pieces, which might be some other content on the website, photographs, videos. I'm just we haven't done podcasts, but say like some kind of podcast where it's a cohesive whole, and that's what we're looking to do.
So we are at time, but as my colleague Mary Lou mentioned and everyone in the chat feature, this webinar is not your only opportunity to ask questions. Please refer to our funding site or on the slide deck for further instructions on how to submit questions post webinar. I'm going to show you the last slide, but basically email me. My email address is dortiv@first5la.org. Please send all your questions to us. We're thankful that everyone joined us, and we look forward to working with everyone. So if you have any, like, I'm also going to show you our timeline. So our final date to submit questions and requests for additional information is July 24th. We will post all of the responses to the questions on the 30th. And final reminder, proposal is due August 6th of this year. That's all we have for today. We have received all of your questions. We know we didn't answer all of them. And I would like to say that if we don't understand your question, we're going to email you. So I'm going to email you asking for further clarification, or we may have questions about your question. So keep an eye out on that. On behalf of First Five, I would like to thank you for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Daisy.
So I am